Grimbles and the Gnad by C.J. Dennis. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Grimbles and the Gnad. It was told me by a bushman, bald and bent and very old, upon the road to pull your leg, and here's the tale he told. 'Twould seem absurd to doubt his word, so honest he appeared, and as he spoke the sou'west wind toyed gently with his beard. First it was the Grimble grubs, which they ate his taters, and all we buried in the end was Martin's boots and gaiters. With this cryptic observation he began his anecdote, and when I sought particulars he smiled and cleared his throat. Then sat him down, and with his brown rough hands about his knees he told it all, and as he spoke his beard waved in the breeze. First it was the Grimble grubs, as I says at startin', which they ate his tater crop, which it troubled Martin. Now this Martin was a farmer with a scientific mind. It was thus the bushman started, as his beard blew out behind. He farmed the land, and understand his luck was all tip-top, till them there little Grimble grubs got in his tater crop. Perhaps you've heard of Grimble grubs, more likely perhaps you've not. When once they taste your taters you can look to lose the lot. And poor Martin he was worried till he met a feller who had read a book about the swook, the which lives in Peru. Now the swook it is a beetle that inhabits wuzzle shrubs, and it makes a steady diet of the little Grimble grubs. So Martin he imported some at very great expense, and turned 'em loose to play the deuce and teach the Grimble sense. Then he swore by wuzzle swooks, friends of cultivators, which they ate the Grimble grubs, which they ate his taters. But when the wuzzle swooks had et the Grimble grubs right up, then they had to change their habits for to find a bite and sup. So they started on his turnips, which was summat to their taste, till Mr. Martin's turnip patch became a howling waste. Then he natural grew peevish till one afternoon he heard from a feller in the poultry line about the guffer bird, which is native of Mauritius and the woods of Tennessee, and preys upon the wuzzle swooks for breakfast, lunch and tea. So he got sonic guffer birds over from Mauritius, which the same by nature are, greedy and malicious, which they ate the wuzzle swooks, plague of cultivators, which they ate the Grimble grubs, which they ate his taters. Then Martin swore by guffer birds until one day he found they'd et up all the wuzzle swooks for miles and miles around, and having still some appetite and being mighty mean, they perched upon his apple trees and stripped his orchard clean. Here's where Martin got excited. He was in an awful funk, until one day he read about the little warty swunk, which has its home in Mexico and lives on guffer birds, and Martin, being desperate, imported him in herds. Then he praised the warty swunks, beady-eyed and vicious, which they ate the guffer birds, native of Mauritius, which they ate the wuzzle swooks, plague of cultivators, which they ate the Grimble grubs, which they ate his taters. Now them swunks were simply wonders, and old Martin stopped his growls, till they ate up all the guffer birds and started on his fowls. And the riots in his henhouse that occurred near every night, they robbed him of his beauty sleep and turned his whiskers white. He was wearing to a shadow till by accident he seen a picture of the boggle dog in some old magazine, and the same he was notorious for hunting swunks and such, and living on their livers, which he fancied very much. Now the boggle dog of Boffin's land is most extremely rare, but Martin mortgaged house and home just to import a pair. They was most ferocious animals, but Martin he was mad, and he sooled 'em on the warty swunks with all the breath he had. Oh, he loved the boggle dogs, called 'em dear and darling, fierce ferocious boggle dogs with their savage snarling, which they ate the warty swunks, beady-eyed and vicious, which they ate the guffer birds, native of Mauritius, which they ate the wuzzle swooks, plague of cultivators, which they ate the grimble grubs, which they ate his taters. Then Martin he picked up a bit and got his proper sleep, until he found the boggle dogs had taken to his sheep, for warty swunks is hard to catch and nimble on their feet, and livers of merino lambs is just as nice to eat. Now I'm thinking here that Martin must have gone a trifle mad, else he'd never have imported such a creature as the Gnad, for the Gnad, though few folks know it, roams about the boffin bogs, and he has a passing fancy for the flesh of boggle dogs. But Martin he imported one with his last bit of cash, and loosed 'em on the boggle dogs, an action worse than rash. But the boggles stayed in hiding, for the boggles were discreet, and the Gnad he cast an eye around for something he could eat. "Solemn Towser!" shouted Martin, dancing mid his ravaged crops, but the Gnad regarded Martin as he slowly licked his chops, and the last we seen of Martin, far as I can call to mind, he was tearing round his paddock with the Gnad just close behind. First it was the grimble grubs, which they ate his taters, then it was the wuzzle swooks, plague of cultivators, then it was the guffer birds, native of Mauritius, then it was the warty swunks, beady-eyed and vicious, then it was the boggle dogs with their snarls and snortin', till the bad voracious Gnad finished his importin'. And all because the grimble grubs they got into his taters, we never found a stitch of him but blucher boots and gaiters. Thus the bushman closed his story with a sympathetic sigh, then wrung my hand most heartily and sadly said goodbye. And as he went 'twas evident that he was ill at ease. He bowed his head, and as I've said, his beard waved in the breeze. End of Grimbles and the Gnad by C.J. Dennis. Recording by Son of the Exiles.